Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Ben Lewis, Dan Hancock and Danny Williams. Now, we've got a bit of a different podcast for you this week, where actually one of our hosts, it's their turn for the hot seat. We have Danny Williams sharing his story, his journey from his beginnings up to the present day and where he is now. And sit back, relax and get ready for a roller coaster.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Dan Hancock, the Mental Health PT, Ben Lewis and Danny Williams. Today we've got something pretty cool for you. We proposed this idea to Danny and we said, look, I think a lot of people are going to want to know a little bit more about you. I think
I'm still not sure about this. We'll give
basically
it a crack.
Me and Ben cornered Danny. No, seriously, like Danny, obviously, we do this podcast together, we're good friends, and I absolutely love hearing about your journey and your story. When I first heard it, it was things that I hadn't really known before. Obviously, some of the obvious things that some of your audience will know will come up as well. But I just thought it would be an amazing opportunity to tell us all about your life, your amazing career, and all your dreams that you have for the future and your vision. I think it will just be a really, really exciting episode and hopefully one that people will take a lot of value from. So yeah, right, I think I'll kick us off. This sounds weird, me asking it, because I know some of the answers, but tell us.
And if I start rambling, just tell me to shut up. Stop talking sometimes.
Give us a little bit of a background on you and your upbringing and early life. What was that like for you?
Okay, so I'm born and raised in Hull. That's where I'm from originally. I've lived in several places, but Hull is where I was born. Hull is where I grew up. Hull is where I was until I was about 16, 17. Older sister, then went on to have a younger sister, then a younger brother, and another younger brother who my dad had another child with another woman. Mum and dad separated, bit of context. So when I was born, mum and dad were together for probably like a year or two after I was born, then they separated. Mum went on to then meet my younger brother and sister's dad, who is my stepdad now. A great guy. I'm so lucky to have a really great stepdad, a really great dad, and a great mum. I think I'm in a very fortunate position like that. So my upbringing, I didn't live with my dad. I saw him kind of infrequently, shall we say, maybe like on a bi-monthly basis. There was no real structure. It was just kind of when kind of work permitted with my stepdad and his work. He was and up until like several months ago, just a few months ago literally, was a taxi driver. It's pretty much my whole life. So his work was very like, worked nights, Saturday nights, different shifts every time. And yeah, so my childhood was very much, I loved football growing up. So football was my main thing. I was obsessed with football. I loved just being out of the house pretty much and out of my mum probably loved it as well because I was not a terror, but like, mum's just, maybe less stressful if I wasn't there. So I used to play football all the time. Where do I even start? So yeah, I guess football was my main thing. I wasn't particularly academic. I paid attention enough to get through school, but I feel like I'm intuitively quite switched on, and I feel like if I pay attention for the last 5 minutes, I'll get away with passing, if that makes sense. But in terms of my school career, I definitely didn't fulfill my potential. I just kind of got through it. I feel like if I worked harder, like everyone, if I just switched on a bit, I could have probably done really, really well, but I didn't care so much for school. Nowhere near as much as I do now, ironically. Because I got to maybe it's a maturity thing. I got to like 21, 22, 23. I'd left school years prior and then I was like, right, I'm going to start reading books. Oh, I care more about academic stuff now and I care more about how the world works and physiology and sports and science and the stars and all that kind of stuff. I got really interested in it, but way after I left school. But anyway, that's another episode. Back to my childhood and kind of growing up and stuff. So yeah, so born and raised in Hull, and my childhood is quite weird in the sense that I feel like everyone loves, not that I had a bad childhood, but I feel like everyone looks back at that childhood fondly and kind of nostalgic. And I vividly remember being a child that couldn't wait to grow up. I couldn't wait to be an adult and fend for myself, which I think is maybe some people can relate to, but not everybody. I remember being like 10 and being like, right, I'm a man now. Like, when do I start renting? Like, when do I move out? Like, I was very much like, I wanted to be a grown up. I got my first job at like 12, 13. I got a paper round. I felt independent. I got £10 a week. Used to go straight to Hollywood Bowl.
Remember those days.
Spend all my £10 a week on games of pool with my friends. So I'd go out at like 10 a.m. in the morning, go to Hollywood Bowl. Never bowled. Went straight to the pool table and spent all my 10 quid on pound games of pool. And that was like every summer for like 4 years, pretty much from the age of like maybe 12, 13 to like literally like 15, 16 or something like that. And yeah, I got that kind of, not addiction, but I needed to be independent, and I was obsessed with, like, anytime I was on my own, I just much preferred me being on my own and not being governed by parents. Not like my parents were ever strict or overreaching, but I just loved that independence. And it got to like sort of 15 or so, and my best mate, Kai, I'll name drop him because I love him and he'll be my best friend forever. His dad and his family owned several restaurants and cocktail bars in Hull. He was like he kind of monopolized the city, basically, when I was growing up. He owned every decent bar, every decent cocktail restaurant, whatever. And it was like age 15, me and Kai being best buds, and his dad kind of roped him into kind of glass collecting, you know, do the odd bit of waitering here or there. And Kai kind of roped me in, and I was like, I'll give it a try. And me being the young lad I was, it was like, boom, independence. A bit more independence. Oh, like I went from £10 a week to like £100 a week sometimes. This is fucking brilliant. And sooner or later, I was becoming this independent adult. I was like 15, literally. I hadn't even finished school yet. Then I turned 16, and it was like, I feel like my parents didn't quite know how to deal with that, because my older sister was much further behind me in that kind of street smart, independent sense. She was very book smart. She was very like, all right, I'm going to go to uni. I'm going to do a degree, did a law degree. But she had no kind of, not to disrespect my sister, but I was very street smart, not academic. She was very academic, not so street smart. So from a parenting standpoint, I probably posed the first real issue for my parents, because they was like, well, he's only a kid. Why is he staying out on Saturday nights till 3 a.m? This isn't right. He's 15. Obviously, there's me taking it in my stride. Like, this is great. I'm like serving cocktails to, like, you know, pretty young women and whatever, getting tips here and there. I'm crafting my skill as a bartender, and I feel like I'm becoming the independent man I always wanted to be. And yeah, so that kind of spiraled and escalated with some element of control, I would say, till the age of about 17, 18. Where I became the manager of a cocktail bar at 18, which I think was pretty crazy. It was a gin bar, and I literally, from the opening, I ran the whole show pretty much, and it was like, but you say wow, but I feel like I had the preparation. I've been doing it for 4 years.
Yeah,
so I was very much prepared for that, and I just took it in my stride. And obviously I didn't do it all on my own. I had help, and I had great employees, but even from the hiring staff perspective, like I hired all the staff myself, interviewed everyone, wrote the menus, the cocktail menu, like did everything, trialed and tested everything. I would run the whole business from top to bottom pretty much. And I was like 18. And then I kind of reached a point where my agenda started to shift a little bit, and I started to think a bit more outside the box. And there's this thing in Hull, and it might be the same in other cities and other towns, where unless you're around people who are going out the city and doing big things and achieving stuff, it's very hard to see past the four walls of your town that you're from. And I was very much in that. I was very much in that mindset until about 18. And I only saw my career ever being in Hull. I saw myself getting a house in Hull. I saw myself having kids in Hull and getting a family and all that kind of stuff. And then I don't remember the day it happened. It might have been a gradual shift, but there was certainly a period of time where I started to wonder what lies outside of Hull. I would go on like little day trips to Leeds and do a bit of shopping and come back and be like, oh, there's another city an hour away. That's cool. Or like I do the odd thing. I've got the odd family member in London. I maybe go to London for a day and be like, oh, London's massive. Wow. And I go back to Hull and I'd think about it for a bit and I'd be like, right, there's another life out here that I might have access to if I just do a bit of research and a bit of working. And then it kind of dawned on me that my dad had always lived in Leeds. So when my mum and dad separated, my dad, he'd always worked for CPS, which is Crime Prosecution Service, so kind of for the police, like an office-based job, but he works in conjunction with the police and then with the magistrate's court. And when my mum and dad separated, he just moved office from the Hull one to the Leeds one, quite a simple transition. And I got to like 18 and I was thinking about this outside life of outside of Hull and progressing a career and that kind of stuff, aspirations. And I thought, well, my dad lives in Leeds and I've never lived with him before. Maybe I could reconnect with him in a sense and stay with him and maybe try and climb this ladder a bit and to discover myself a bit more. Maybe I'll get a bartender job in Leeds and it was a bit more of a step up. And for me at the time, that was like the biggest thing I could ever do, like moving out of Leeds. All my friends were like, you moving to Leeds? What? It was like it's an hour train. But it was like moving to New York or something. It was like huge. And I remember I quit the job that I'd worked so hard to get to. I remember, I'll never forget, I finally got to the £400 a week salary, which I'd been craving for like 18 months, 2 years, because other managers were on this wage, right? And because I was so young, I didn't get it. And I was out working everyone for like 2 years straight, doing all the hours up at 6 a.m. and then I'd be at work until like 2, 3 a.m. the next day. Then I'd go back and do it the next day. And sometimes I'd actually sleep at work, get up and just go again. And I didn't care. I was young and I loved doing it. But I was so determined, I'd never forget that £400 a week. And then I got it and I was like, oh, that's kind of the limit now. That's what the highest paid person gets at that time. So I was like, well, now what? And it kind of coincided with these aspirations kind of expanding. Anyway, so I decided to quit my job. I was I think I was 18 or maybe just turned 18. And I moved in with my dad, who obviously welcomed me with open arms and said, look, you want to come live with me? I think it'd be great. I moved out of Hull, moved in with my dad, who lived on his own, obviously. And I applied for a job at The Alchemist, which is a well-known cocktail chain, well, still is now. And for me, that was a huge step up from working in like little restaurants and cafes to working in a big chain where you have to be trained how to do your job properly. You have to learn a giant menu. There's 73 cocktails I had to learn. Wow. And it's a really it was a very like, for me at the time, it felt very academic. Like I had to study for these things. I had to do like 6 exams before I was even allowed on the bar. Until that point, I was just a barback, which was basically like going back to being a glass collector, like 4 years ago. So I was a glass collector, a bit of a bitch really for the bartenders, a bit of a laughing stock, but that's kind of how the relationship works, and that's pretty normal. And you're just fetching empty bottles and you know wiping stuff that gets spilt, that kind of stuff. And that kind of determination kicked in, and I was like, I can't do this for much longer. I didn't move here for this. And I actually was the fastest ever person at the time, might not be anymore, but at the time, the fastest person in Alchemist history to go from being a barback to being a bartender. And that was like a huge thing for me. And people was really shocked at how just obsessed with progressing I was, which seems kind of obvious now, kind of the person I've become. It seems like I was always like that. But at the time, it was just like just the norm. That's just how I am. I work hard, got a hard-working family. This is what I'm like. So I went from being a barback to being a bartender. And for me, that was like prime, like, I don't know, maybe naive, but also just taking stuff in my stride, and just like I felt like limitless and undefeatable. Like I just was like, every Saturday night I'd be taking on loads of customers, taking on loads of orders. I don't worry, I'll serve him, and just really owning the bar. And I'd have nights where I failed, I'd have nights where I found it difficult, but those nights I learned so much about myself and how to serve even faster, how to multitask better. And I would say that there was a kind of an 18-month period where I worked for The Alchemist before I moved to London, which I'll go into in a sec. That 18-month period was so defining for me. I went from being like, I guess, a bit of a cocky young lad from Hull that thought he could go into the next step, to then being taught a lesson on how really difficult it is to take the next step. And working for a big company, having like a proper manager, having other staff who were way better than me at my job, and really just kind of being humbled by the whole experience, really kind of defined me. And then I had to go back to square one and then build myself up again and try to get to the top again. So I'm working at The Alchemist and life's great. And I went to London to visit a family member. And bear in mind, I'm 18 at the time, and I'm not too settled in Leeds. I've been there for a while, but I still feel like I've got a lot of time left to live in that city. And I wasn't even thinking about moving again. Like I was already in New York City, right? Like I felt like I'd already gone clear. It's mad. Like I remember that period of my life, I'd go back to Hull, like some hot shot. Like people would be, oh, how was life, Danny? What's it like? I'm like, oh, it's pretty good actually. Yeah. I'm only literally an hour down the road in Leeds. Like, I'm not in like Miami or something. But anyway, it's funny how life works. And then, so I go to London on a little trip to see some family. And I was actually in a coffee shop. I forget the street now, but it's in Soho. What's the street now? I'm going to remember in a sec. Anyway, I'm in Soho at Cafe Nero. I'm sat outside waiting for my train to come home. So my train's like not for another hour or something. I'm like, I'm going to go to central London because it's, a bit of a tourist at the time. I go to central, sit outside a coffee shop, and lo and behold, a model scout walks past and asks to chat to me. And at the time, and he still is now, a very well-known model scout. And at the time, I actually followed him on Instagram because I knew how big he was. And he'd scouted some of the models that I aspired to look like, not to be a model, but just like they just look so cool. So I just followed them, right? They live great lives. So I followed, and then when he kind of approached me, I was thinking, oh shit, that's him, oh my God. He just kept walking closer and closer and closer. And then he pulled his sunglasses down and I was like, excuse me, can I talk to you for a sec? And I'm like, oh my God, what? Cut a long story short, we had a really positive conversation, and he said that he thinks I could be a model, which blew my mind. I was like, so what? Like, I'm a bartender, not a model. Like thinking the lads are going to banter me when I get back for this. I'm looking for my mate in the crowd to me, who's pranking me? Anyway, long story short, he took me to meet a couple of agencies the following week. So I came back down to London, met a couple of agencies who I already had heard of. I went to see Next, which are a huge agency, and then I also went to meet Nevs. And they both wanted to sign me, and I signed with Nevs because I just got more of a sense of like they're going to care for me more. Nothing against Next, I just didn't have the right vibe. Went with Nevs, I just felt like they really cared about me and my career and that kind of stuff. And so within a month, I went from being like this unbeknown bartender who wanted to maybe travel Europe with a bartending job somehow, maybe learn a language, that kind of stuff. That was a vision I had for myself. Just wanted to travel. That's my only real kind of passion at this point. To then being like moving to London and being a model, and I was like 19 at the time. So 19, moved to London. to pursue a full-time modeling career, which all sounds so glamorous and so like, you know, fairy tale like, but it was actually very difficult. And the first year, I wouldn't have even called it a full-time job. I probably worked the best week, the odd time I'd work 5 days a week, but most of the time it was more like 2 or 3. And I never forget, in my second month of modeling, I went a whole 2 weeks straight without booking a job, which felt bizarre, considering I used to work like 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks sometimes, and manage restaurants, that kind of stuff. And I'd be sitting at home waiting for an email from Nev saying, what, you know, and I was thinking, God, I've had my time. I got lucky. My first month, I actually landed on my feet and landed a few jobs. And I was like, this is great, living the dream. Second month, reality hit. Modeling is actually a very inconsistent industry where, to some degree, it doesn't matter how you look or who you are. It's just a case of jobs coming in at the right time. You go to the right casting, meet the right person, and that client likes your agency. They might prefer a different agency. You might be the right model, but the wrong agency. And that could be the very reason why you don't book a job. So I'm learning all this on the go. Like I said, I'm 19 and starting to embrace how strange it all is. I'm starting to embrace how not normal it is and how unstructured it is. And so I kind of settled in that lifestyle of, you know, working when I got the email, I'd go to a shoot. And the good thing about modeling is you meet so many people, which was one of the great things I loved about bartending, is you meet a different crowd every single night. And modeling was great because when I started to get busier and it got a bit more consistent, I was going to meet different clients every other week. And I was, you know, 5 days a week, I got every different client every day, different city every day. And I got to meet so many amazing people. And for that, I'll always be grateful. And then I was, so where are we now? Like 19, 20, gets to 20 and I got an email. Sorry, not an email. It was a direct message on Instagram. And it was from an ITV casting person, someone who casts talent for an ITV show. And at the time, I'm like, I have a feeling this could be like something like Love Island or something. This is pretty bizarre. And we had a few conversations, me and this person. My agency didn't know at the time, and it was Love Island. And cut a long story short, they offered me to go on the show, and I bottled it. I said, I cannot do that. Like, I'm 20 years old. It scares the hell out of me. I don't even feel like a real model yet, let alone being on TV. Like, look at me, I'm this big, yada yada. So I got really scared, and just basically, and thank God I did. Like, best decision I've ever made was I said no to it. I said I'm not going to do it, and I just didn't do it that year. And then the 12 months from that moment, maybe it planted a seed of confidence in my head of I could go and do bigger and more scarier things and still live to tell the tale. I'm not sure. But I think from that moment, the next 12 months, I was a lot more confident because maybe it's because in my head, I saw it as such a grand opportunity that I had the strength to turn down. Obviously, looking back retrospectively, it's not quite like that. But at the time, I'd said no to this brilliant opportunity and then went back to the life that I thought I wanted to lead, which gave me a lot of strength and confidence. And then I get to the following kind of March, April time, and they came back again. They came back again, but this time it was through my agency. So in the year that they'd asked me to, when they asked me again, I'd kind of established myself as quite a regular. I was working at a lot of big clients a lot of the time, and I was posting on social media a lot of the stuff I was doing. Not to even say that I was like getting a name for myself, but in the e-commerce world of modeling and shooting with brands and stuff, I was quite recognizable. I would get recognized in the street sometimes, like, oh, you're the guy of ASOS, or you're the guy of JD, you're the guy of River Island, or whatever it might have been. And people would show me screenshots of that. I bought that top you was wearing that. And I'm like, great, mate, yeah, cool. So I guess in that year to then them asking me again, they probably saw me as more of a strong candidate for the show, I guess, and maybe a bit more headstrong, maybe a bit more established. And that's exactly how my agency saw it. So they proposed it to me not from a sense of this is a big risk or very scary. They presented it more like you'd be great on this. You should do this. And rather than it being the previous year when it was just with me and this ITV casting person, and then I decided I wasn't ready, all of a sudden it was being presented to me with the tone of voice of you should do this. This would be good for you. And also I'd become a much more confident young man. I'd lived in London on my own for a year or 2 years at this point. And I just felt like I was as ready as I'll ever be to do something as big as that.
Before we get into that, because that's going to be quite a big subject that we'll potentially come on to, I'd like to pick apart a couple of things with regards to your early life and how it led you to that decision. So one of, Ben will probably agree with me, one of the biggest takeaways that I had from that is, and I don't know whether I can relate to this, and maybe that's why I picked up on it, but there seemed to just be a lot of aspiration. There seemed to be a lot of wanting to explore and like adventure and that type of thing. Do you think that was maybe then one of the reasons that you didn't stick in school and potentially wasn't academical, because that's potentially maybe conventional, and for you there was always just this idea of, right, there's something more, there's something different, or maybe you want to do things differently?
Yeah, I think a large part of the way my mind worked, especially as a kid, and it might sound a bit like, I don't know how to describe it. It might sound a bit like not as profound as you might want it to be, but it was purely a case of I didn't want my life to go on, and I don't want to become an adult and nothing change. Like, I wasn't a particularly, as a child, I remember consciously thinking, like, I don't want it to be like this forever. Like, I want more. And that's not to say anything bad about my parents or my upbringing or the area that I'm from or anything like that. I just knew there was more out there, and there's people out there like me who's gone and done that. And I used to watch a lot of football, like I said, as a kid, and you hear stories about young footballers off the estate, you know, rough backgrounds, and they go and pursue their dreams. So why can't I do stuff for myself?
What do you think there's been anything that's influenced that? Because I mean, me and Ben joke now as well that you're so mature for your age, right? Compared to us.
Yeah, I'm a bit more mature than me, certainly. Anyway,
Sometimes.
What is there anything that you can pinpoint that influenced this kind of just wanting to grow up, this aspiring towards, I suppose maturity is potentially the right word for that.
Yeah, I definitely aspire towards that. I think there's a couple of things. So the first thing would be, out of all my siblings, I was always the sensible, like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Don't worry, I'll do that. Whereas my siblings were a little bit more rebellious, as kids are, right? Kids, they say no, they chat back, they're naughty. And I just wasn't. Like, I was very much like if they're not going to do the dishes, I'll just do it. It's not my turn tonight, but I'll just do it.
I can totally see that.
And that just, for some reason, just manifested itself in how I am as an adult now. I don't know where that really came from. Maybe it's my dad's input on me, because he's a very polite, very, like, I don't know if you ever meet my dad, but I'm sure you will at some point. But he's very, and anyone who's ever met my dad who's listened to this will completely agree. Like, he's the most polite, good manners, like, gentleman, kind of a friendly guy. And I definitely have that from my dad, I would say. But yeah, so as a kid, it was kind of, I don't know, not wanting to like annoy people or get in people's way or be disruptive. Like, I wasn't naughty in school. I just didn't really pay attention. And this kind of thirst for wanting to grow up, definitely, I think a huge part of wanting to grow up was so that I could take more control of my own life.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of kids and a lot of even adults, even to this day, like, they kind of, they're it's easy to get comfortable when other people are kind of looking after you and ensuring that nothing goes wrong. And for me, I wanted to grow up so fast because I wanted to take control of all the things in my life so that no one else had to. Maybe a part of that is because we didn't really have much growing up, and I didn't want to be a burden on my parents. I specifically remember, like, thinking, I'll never forget, like, when you, like all families do, your parents ask you, what do you want for Christmas? Like, come on, what do you want for Christmas? And I remember, like, one year being like, I don't want any presents. Like, I'm good. Like, you just get everyone else presents. And I was like 9 or something. Like, I remember at least 9 or 10, I'd be like, now, honestly, like, I know money's tight. Like, I know things aren't easy. Like, that my friends want Xboxes and stuff. And I know my parents are going to expect me to want an Xbox. Yeah. And I might be like, just on it, don't worry. Somehow I'll pay for it myself. You know, and that, honestly, that's just what I was like as a kid.
I'm making £10 a week, you know?
Yeah. You just need like in 8 years, I'll buy one. So yeah, I don't know what the real origins of that was. Yeah, we have to speak to a therapist, probably, or psychologist. But I definitely think I had that kind of mindset from a very young age, and I wanted to act like an adult much longer before I was.
Yeah. So you've referenced before, I think it was on another podcast, or it might have been when we were out for dinner. You said before that you felt you were born into the wrong era, or you should have been born in a different age. Is that something that's always been with you from, because obviously there's a lot of this goes back to your childhood. Is that something that's been with you all your life, or is that more something that you've thought post Love Island and then all the social media stuff, which I'm sure we'll come on to? But
no, I mean, if I've said that in the past, I think I want to retract that statement. I think it's more a case of, so the generation that we're living in right now, the world is evolving 1,000,000 miles an hour. But every other generation before that, it evolved at a pretty linear pace, I would say.
Right.
And in the 21st century, and now it's like, right? And we've all got to adapt and evolve with the pace of that. And it's very difficult. I think when I was like 15, 16, there would have been plenty of other kids out there just like me. But now, because life's changing so quickly, it's very hard for everyone to keep up on that same level, and you have to just become yourself and then be comfortable in yourself, rather than trying to keep up with the pace. And I think maybe as a kid, I was probably a bit old for my age, right? I think I was probably a bit of an old man when I was a kid. People used to say that. But I wasn't like some guru, or particularly like, I wasn't very like wise or anything like that. I just had more of a sensible head on my shoulders, I would say. That's probably it. I wouldn't say I'm particularly special. It was just a case of, I don't know. I like to think I was quite aware of what was going on as well. To be fair to myself, I do like to think I was quite aware as a kid. I would notice other kids behaving a certain way, or other kids going down a certain path. Like, I'll never forget, like, so the area that I grew up on, it's a particularly rough estate in Hull, and notoriously in the 90s and the early 2000s, when I was born, or just before that, it was really quite rife for like riots and a lot of racism and that kind of stuff. And especially when we first moved there, like, I wasn't even allowed to go out on my own because my mum and stepdad would be scared that something might happen to me. And there was kids on my street who very much fit that description of, they would pick on me and bully me and whatever, and I'd go to play football in the street and then you just get randomly abused for no reason. It's like, why? But I very quickly identified that that's not how I wanted to be. It's not who I wanted to become. And also very much credit to my parents, because they knew what was out there as well. And they made sure I didn't go to the same school as those kids. I went to school in a different catchment area. And luckily I went to a grammar school, which is in a different town, which somehow I managed to get into. And I wasn't ever with those kids who could have negatively influenced my upbringing. Obviously kids will be kids and not everyone's perfect, but I'm so grateful that I didn't go to the school that was near my house, because I probably would have turned out a very different adult. I would have been molded into a very different adult. Just going off how kids off my estate have turned out, like, not to discredit people, and everyone's, I've got no, like there's some turn out good people, you know what I'm saying? But I'm very grateful for the journey that I've gone on, and I owe a lot of that to my parents and the decisions they made for me.
So we're going to get to when you then spoke to the agency, or who you were with, and they kind of then started to think going on the show could be a good idea. But I've got one last question before we do that, which I think could be quite interesting. Yeah. We've spoken a lot about kind of this desire and this drive and this hunger, if you want to call it that, to aspire for more, and maybe not being totally satisfied with where you're at, which means that, you know, there's this chase. We would think that then when an opportunity like that shows itself, that would be something that someone would jump at. So you talked a little bit about the thought process there. What was then going through your head to then actually be like, no? Was it coming from a little bit of, you know, imposter syndrome? Well, was it, you know, were you scared? Was it then realizing that although it's an opportunity, it might not have been right for you?
Well, before I go into it, it's probably a mixture of a few things, but the first thing I want to point out is that I wasn't this kind of romantic, like, I didn't used to fantasize about my hopes and dreams when I was a kid. You know, and I think a lot of people who end up becoming successful, people assume that when they was a kid, they manifested it all and used to sit in front of the stars and dream about their future, right? I never did that. Like, I didn't have any hopes or dreams. I didn't, not particularly anyway. Like, I wanted to be a footballer at one point, scored the winner in the World Cup final maybe. But like, I didn't sit there and think like, God, when I'm old, I want to build a 6-figure business. I want to become an online coach. I want to do this, and this. And even to this day, I still don't. So I wasn't like, I didn't used to fantasize about these big aspirations. It was more just I knew what I didn't want. It was more just trying to avoid or stay away from certain paths that I knew weren't right for me. And I think that kind of mindset got me out of Hull, got me out of Leeds, got me into London, got me into a modelling agency and doing things that I never thought I could achieve. But I didn't used to sit there and think, oh, I want to be a model, I want to travel the world, I want to do. It was quite different. Maybe a lot of people do that, maybe a lot of people don't, I'm not sure. But I definitely didn't do that. So when Love Island presented itself to me, it wasn't a case of, oh, this is exactly what I always wanted, I've got to grab it with both hands, and I might make a mistake, but I can't say no. It was more a case of like, I never thought I'd even be in London. Like, I didn't know I'd even be here. I just didn't want to be back where I was from. So when it presented itself to me, it wasn't like this isn't what I've always dreamed of. It was a bit easier to say no to it because I didn't even ever imagine what it was like to do that in the first place. So when I said no to it, it was because I didn't think it was right for me at the time. And it was as simple as that. Like, when it came around again, I thought about it logically, methodically. I was very much influenced by the people around me, to be quite honest. I can say that retrospectively. Was that friends, the agency, a bit of a mix? Predominantly friends and agencies and whatever. People most likely with good intentions. I can't speak for everybody. But the thing is with Love Island and anything to do with like TV and the media, people have this like blanket cover over it and think it's all just like a golden ticket to success. And people assume that anything that's to do with TV, oh, he's on the TV, boom, multi-millionaire, Ferraris and hot women, smashed it, right? That's what everyone thinks about what it must be like to go on national TV. And I can confidently say it's absolutely not what it's like. If anything, if you're not prepared for it, it's actually the worst thing you could possibly do. It's putting yourself under the microscope if you don't even like how you look. Like, why do you want people to look at how you look if you don't, not even sure what people are going to see? So yeah, like, I would never say I regret anything. I don't regret any decisions that I made. I definitely didn't make that decision to do Love Island wholeheartedly. It wasn't all my own. Like, I was influenced, and I'm just glad that I had the kind of mindset to take it in my stride. And although it wasn't easy, a lot of it wasn't easy. Like, I've managed to turn it into a positive. But
Definitely.
One thing that I think about a lot to this day even is that the narrative and the perception of of TV and dating shows and that kind of stuff, it needs to change.
Yeah.
And people need to stop seeing Love Island and fame and TV shows as a golden ticket to success, because it really isn't.
Yeah, there's we've chatted about this many times before, and I think I want to come at this from two angles. One of them is that I feel sometimes that, well, the younger generation is massively influenced by this because of all the reasons that you said. Like, they create this ideology, this ideal that it's this incredible life, and then it's this quick fix. And I think a lot of this comes from this lack of identity, or this lack of people maybe not knowing what they want to give to the world, or potentially, you know, low self-worth themselves, because they think, well, what can I offer to the world? Therefore, I can't pursue everything. Oh, you know, I maybe have one or two things going for me. I can utilize that and I can be on TV or whatever. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, and we spoke about this the first time we met, actually, Danny, didn't we? When I said that I was with a client and I was speaking to her, and when the latest series were on, it might have actually been your series. I can't exactly remember. And this is when I was being a personal trainer for anyone that's listening. And one of the clients came in and I was like, oh, how was your weekend? And then she was like, oh, my wee girl. She was like, oh, you not believe this. 6 years old, got her own iPad, her own phone, her own TV in her room. She was like, her and her friends had a sleepover. Oh, you should have seen it. It was so funny. They were just copying Love Island, and they were saying, oh, my head's turned. Don't know, my head's turned. Or, oh, I'm going to leave him. Talking about boys and they're in primary school. And I told you, and your face just dropped. And
it just dropped there in a sec ago.
And you sorry for reminding you.
Like,
sorry
wow.
for revisit. And and your face dropped, and I could see how hurt you were by it. And more so this latest series that was on as well. I remember watching it and I just thought, this is just teaching so many bad values. It's teaching people, you know, that love is a game, or that you know, you should have your mind changed, or you should, you know, manipulate and all that type of stuff. And hopefully that was a rare case. Hopefully, you know, it's not every kid in the UK watching it, but I just think it's the way that that's portrayed is damaging, but also the way that then they portrayed you guys as well.
It's difficult, because at what point does it become unethical to entertain people in a certain way? Obviously, the viewers have a choice to put it on, right? They don't have to watch it. Love Island, ITV, they just create a show, and if people watch it, they watch it. If they don't, they don't. But at what point does it become unethical? It's a grey area. It's difficult, because I feel like with shows like that, and in TV in general, like whether it's the news, whether it's footballers, whether it's Love Island, anything, like people get glamorized and then people get demonized. Yeah. And the middle bit isn't very fun, is it? It's not very entertaining. So why would you watch like average news? Like, oh, Dan got a new hoodie today, boom, put it on the news. Like, that's not good news. It has to be really great news or really terrible news, right? Yeah. And Love Island works in a very similar fashion, and which is fine to some degree, but then the difficulty is if the storyline's not fully accurate, or it's manipulated, or if the storyline isn't quite reflective of the people in it. So people's characters get misconstrued, and then you're glamorizing a false perception of someone, or you're demonizing a false perception of someone, and then you throw that real person back into the mixer, back into the public, and they've got to deal with the consequences of this false perception. And I feel just as sorry for the people who get demonized as the ones who get glamorized. I really do, because either way, you've got a narrative to keep up with now, that the public believe you're a certain something, and if you're not inside, then how do you deal with that? There's this deficit that you have to then make up in order to create this, I don't know, cohesion in yourself. I don't know. It must be difficult. So as much as people might be like, oh, I wasn't shown in the best light, I could easily say, oh, like they show me to be a bad guy and all that kind of. But that's fine. The benefit of being the bad guy, I guess, is that I have the rest of my life now to show everyone that I'm not that.
Yeah.
You know, I came out, and then ever since the moment I came out, I've just been myself. And then slowly but surely, the scales start to tip the other way, and people start to go, oh, you're a normal guy. I meet people in the street, ask for a picture. Oh, you're actually pretty friendly. Oh, have a good day, bro. And it's that kind of, it might be a very slow rate, but the scales are shifting, and I'm okay with that. And it must be equally as difficult for the people who get glamorized who, with all due respect, maybe don't deserve the adulation. And because just as equally, there's people who get thrown on that show who might have said like a bitchy comment, and it was powerful for a woman, or like it might have been a guy who stuck up for a bro. But the truth is that like he only stuck up for them for a different agenda that the TV didn't show, and the public don't know that. So then he gets glamorized as being this like, oh, he's really good morals, that kind of stuff. He might not have them, and that could leave people with just as difficult mental problems to sieve through. So it's a difficult one, and you want to get 40 something minutes of an edited version of a whole 24 hours or even 48 hours of people's day. So then the public make really strong judgments on all that content, and it's like, you know, at what point is it unethical from the TV production? But then also, at what point does it need to be more common sense from the society, from the viewer, to say, look, as much as I'm invested in this show, I need to take it with a pinch of salt, because it might not be truly reflective of the real events.
Yeah, I think we'll move on from this in a moment, because I know we're really keen to talk about everything else that's going on in your life. But there are just a couple of things, just whilst we are on it, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
What would you like to see change moving forward, if these shows stay on the air, which, you know, I think they probably will? What would you like to change, and also what did you learn from that experience? I know you've said I think that positive you took from that was amazing. Oh, people might hate me. Great, I've got the rest of my life to prove it. You know, that's classic Danny. You know, putting a positive spin on something. What do you want
to see change? It's two very difficult questions to answer. I guess the overarching thing that needs to change is we need to, from a grassroots level, if you can call it that, we need to stop putting people like myself and Islanders and reality TV stars who achieve very little in a space of like 5 or 6 weeks and put them on a giant pedestal. Because like we're chatting three lads right now, I'm very much a normal person, and I could be sat here any ex-Ireland or any ex-anything on a reality TV show. And you go from being a normal person to still being a normal person, except everyone loves you or hates you. And you didn't really achieve much in the middle bit. So if you've got like, if I had kids, or if my little brothers and sisters or cousins, whatever, and they're absolutely idolizing someone who 6 weeks ago you didn't know existed. And in the time when you knew they existed to now you loved them, like nothing really changed besides like the show they was on, they didn't really do much. That could be a problem. Maybe you're idolizing the wrong people. Like idolize like great authors who have written like loads of books, or idolize like, you know, I don't know, people who've caused real change in society, or scientists who made great discoveries, or think people in my eyes, people have gone and actually, you know, achieved great things. There's people out there to idolize, but I think our society at the moment they're not idolizing the right people, and that's myself included. Do people who idolize me maybe shouldn't be, or maybe for the wrong reasons anyway. Yeah. So I guess the thing that we need to change is remind people that there are other great things out there that we could glamorize and we could idolize, and they're not being spoken about anywhere near enough. There's people out there doing some incredible things, so many different, a range of topics, whether it be charities or whether it be like human rights movements, or loads of different things. You know, we've interviewed so many amazing people on this podcast who've achieved so much. Why aren't they being glamorized and identified as national heroes and getting millions of followers and that kind of stuff? Why, you know? So I guess that if we can change that, I'd change that. Yeah. And I guess the biggest, I've learned so much from this whole process, but the biggest thing that I would have learned is I'd learned a lot about myself. So I've learned a lot about people, I've learned a lot about the industry, I've learned a lot about my career, about other people's careers, how life works. But I think the most important thing is I've learned who I am as a person. Yeah. Because until 21, I didn't really know. I was just like a version of myself drifting through life, bouncing off the parameters of what society said I should or could or won't be. And then you get to like this period of, like where all of us go through, has been on that TV show where everyone's judging you on a daily basis, and you're almost in a rush to find out who you are. And that's like the most important thing. Like for me anyway, it was like the most important thing. I wake up, right, need to know who I am. Like what do I want to be putting out there on social media? What kind of messages do I want to be delivering? Kind of a man am I, you know? And luckily I'm at that place now where I know who I am, but it's wild and scary to think if I didn't go through that period where I would be right now. And that's why I think I'm so grateful and so lucky to have gone through what I've gone through, because I've arrived at this point in my life, and there's not everyone else hasn't, but a lot of people haven't had that kickstart, that accelerated process that I got. I got that literally the jump start, say go find yourself in the next 12 months or you're gone, sink or swim.
Yeah.
And luckily I'm swimming now, but it could have been very different if I didn't ever do Love Island. And even though it was in some ways a negative experience, like I'm swimming now and that's cool. So I'm happy with that. So
Brilliant.
It's class. I think when we first met you, I think you described that period of your life on the show, coming out of it as having been put into a tumble dryer on a fast spin for 3 hours, then pulled out and asked to walk in a straight line and be expected to walk in a straight line.
It's like that. Do you ever play that game where it's like Dizzy Donuts or something, where you have to run circles on a football, then take a penalty when you're dizzy? It's kind of like that. Like you're expected to achieve a hard, difficult task after being spun around a football like 20 times. Like 9 times out of 10 you're going to miss. But then the difficulty is, like, sorry to interrupt you, but the difficulty is you miss. Quite obviously you're going to miss because you're dizzy, and then you'd get all this hate and all this scrutiny. That's what's quite difficult.
So you've clearly navigated your way out of the tumble dryer. I think coming up for what, 4 years?
Yeah,
I think you said.
I'm about to be ironed.
So now you're on that path. Let's start looking to what you've got going on in your life just now and to the future. So let's talk about some of the projects you're working on just now. Give our listeners a bit of a feel for things.
Yeah, so obviously I went on this mad self-explorative kind of journey. And again, in some respects, I'm grateful for the pandemic because it gave me the time and the kind of the freedom to go on that journey without any real pressure, because work had quietened right down. I wasn't expected to go to events, make up appearances, meet people, network, connect. I wasn't doing any of that. I was just at home with my dad, which in terms of discovering who you are, couldn't have been any better company. He is a very humble, patient, gentle guy, and he let me discover who I am without any real pressure like you might get from some parents. And I think what helped me with my relationship with my dad was that I didn't know him so well growing up. So when I lived with him, it was more like friends rather than like I'm your dad, you got to do this, you got to get up and get to work, or you're not living here unless you've got a job. And like, there was none of that. So yeah, first and foremost, I went on this explorative journey and discovered myself kind of thing, and realized I'm more in common with my dad than I ever thought. And then, so that led me down this path of remembering who I am. It's strange, you talk about it, I don't want to get deep, but the discovery of who you are, it's not even a discovery, it's remembering who you was. It just really it sounds quite profound, but it's like you always knew, you just ignored it for so long. And then I got to this point where I know I like helping people. I know I like providing value to people and making a difference in people's lives. And I love fitness. I love health and fitness. And then through lockdown, I discovered a passion for cooking and nutrition and looking after my body. And I think another conversation probably, but a lot of that stems from kind of my mum never being so well when I was younger as well. Just to briefly, my mum has a condition called fibromyalgia, amongst a couple of other things going on, but that's the main thing she's always kind of had, especially throughout my childhood, which meant her health was always kind of up and down, went through different phases of it being quite serious, and then she'd have kind of like flares of it, that kind of stuff. So subliminally, subconsciously, I always wanted to make sure that I didn't end up having to worry about my health. So I always was kind of into the gym from an early age. I always played football, always ate relatively clean. So yeah, on this kind of discovery journey, I remembered that that's who I am. That's the kind of person I want to be, the kind of life I want to lead. So that took me down the how can I make this a career? How can I monetize this hobby? Because at this point I started reading too, and I'm learning a lot about how the key to happiness is, the key to life is. It's all about doing stuff that fulfills you and doing stuff that makes you feel good when you get in bed, not about money. And when I was thinking about all this stuff, like I said, I was in a lockdown. I wasn't going out socializing, going to events, doing what was expected of me. And I think that period really kind of was my saving grace, because I had everything was just still and silent. And I had the opportunity to look deep and think, right, that's what I want to go down. That's the path I want to choose. I'm going to go after it. And there was no real outside noise for the first time ever. So yeah, I decided that the route I wanted to choose and go down was pursue fitness and pursue health and wellness, and not just become a PT, but become someone who could provide inspiration, provide motivation, better myself every day, and really kind of embody that role of I can help people on their journeys in the same way that I've managed to help myself. And that's not even just working out in the gym. That's just like becoming better as a person, I guess.
I'd like to just, before we get on to that, I just really quite like to touch on, apologies, the point about this journey of self-discovery, because we discussed this in a podcast the other day with Lawrence Price. If you haven't listened to that, it's an absolutely awesome episode, and he's been on a very similar journey, and I have as well. And it's one of these things, again, like people look at it and they think that you're being pretentious. They think it's this airy-fairy thing. They're just like, people sometimes actually see it as a negative because they think that you're becoming detached from reality, whereas actually you're becoming more attached and more in tune with your emotions and your awareness. And was there a moment where it kind of just clicked, like things are changing, or was it kind of a gradual process? The reason I'm asking is for anyone listening, a lot of people think there's just this aha moment and suddenly you wake up and everything's changed. Was there a difference? And the reason I'm asking as well is for myself, there almost was a little bit of an aha moment.
Eureka.
It was almost like a eureka moment. I was on holiday with my partner Amy, and we were talking about something. I mentioned something about me getting like slagged in the group chat or something like that, and I used to always take that really personally. And I was like, oh, why do they pick on me? They always pick on me. They always pick on me. And Amy used to always have my back, being like, they always pick on you. It's a shame. And I just had this moment. I was like, maybe I deserve it. Like, maybe I'm being a bit of a dick. And me and Ben then went for a drink a few weeks later, and I went up to him and I just like hugged him. And I was like, why are you mates with me? He was like, what? He was like, what are you talking about? I was like, why are you mates with me? I was like, I'm a dick. Like I'm just not a great person sometimes.
Still are a dick. No, I'm only joking.
I could have told you that ages ago.
and it was honestly, there was this moment, and then that's the day. Those are the days my life changed forever. And I was already coaching people, and I was, that was fulfilling. I was wanting to change lives, and I just thought, oh my God, like my whole life I've just been this person. And sorry, it's not to make this about me at all. It's purely because, like I said, like it was almost like a eureka moment for me, which I think a lot of people assume it is. However, that is actually more rare. It's more a gradual journey, and then this awareness comes into play, and you suddenly realize what your purpose is. What was that journey like for you?
For me, it wasn't a eureka moment. It was a gradual thing. I remember the kind of the period in my life when it started to change, and it started to change when I realized that in order to become the person I wanted to become, I had to choose to behave like that person every day, because the default version of myself won't get me there. Like the default Danny Williams that goes through life on autopilot, the picture, the trajectory doesn't end well for me, and it doesn't for anybody for that matter, for most people anyway. Your autopilot self gives into indulging behaviors. It gives into old hobbies that don't serve you. It hangs around with toxic people that serve your ego, and all these things that aren't good for your progression. And it's so easy to fall into that trap of being your default. Like, this is what I've always done, so it's what I'm always going to do. And I remember the period in my life when I started to recognize that and think, if I just don't really think about stuff and just go about my day-to-day life, that times by 20 years, I don't like how that looks. Even though like I had a decent day today, and I went to the pub with my mates, or like I met an old friend, or I got lucky on a night out, or whatever it might have been, I recognized in a certain period of my life that if I kept doing that, then the trajectory isn't how I always kind of imagined it was going to be. So I had to wake up every day and choose to be this new person, right? I'm not saying that I changed overnight or like an overnight makeover, but it was just like the little things. I tried to do it incrementally. And for the first 6 months, 9 out of 10 days, I was the old person. I wasn't a new person. Like I tried, and then about halfway through the day, it failed. Sometimes the first hour I failed, and I'd be like, I'll start again tomorrow.
Was this? It's just I'm fascinated by this. So it was a conscious. It really was a conscious effort.
It really was. Yeah, it really was. I remember I wrote it down on a piece of paper. I wrote down old me, new me, and I wrote a line on it, and I said old me, and it was things like nights out. It was things like mates with X, Y, Z. It was things like spend too much time with. It was things spend too much time on. TV shows that I used to watch that used to kind of trigger me a little bit. I used to still watch them. And I wrote a list, and it was like old me, new me, and the new me sounded so profound, and I'm probably not so much like the new me that I wrote down on that list like 3 years ago. But it would say things like, I don't know, read every day. It would say things like be kind, be more grateful, and the typical stuff, right? Because at that point I didn't know too much about that new life. I just knew what it kind of looked like a bit. So I kind of guessed a lot of it, but I knew it to some degree what that version of me looked like. But I remember the very vividly on that list, it also said action taker. And that was something that I stand by now, and that's become so much more important as the time's gone on, as someone who takes action rather than someone who procrastinates. That was one of my biggest things. I used to procrastinate and just sit and think and, think about the theory of everything and kind of overanalyze and that kind of stuff, and think that was kind of doing the work. But actually, it's like so much better to just like take action and fail.
Writing the list,
rather
than doing the things on the list.
To some degree, writing the list was probably a form of that. But I remember it very well. I remember writing the list, and sometimes I have to rewrite that list. I've done it again in more than once since that time. But that was the period in my life when it was starting to change, and days would go by when if I didn't do too many things on that list, then I'd start to feel a bit guilty, and I'd be like, well, you said to yourself you're going to do that, and then why aren't you showing up and being that person? I think writing it out in person kind of legitimized it all. I think I had all these thoughts in my head, and you talk about remembering who you want to be and that kind of stuff. But when it's all in your head and you don't have it out in the real reality of life, it's quite easy to ignore and shut down and pretend like it never existed. And then the next level was like I started to behave like that in front of other people, and people might say, oh, you've changed, or whatever. And it was kind of made it more difficult because this period of my life coincided with the newfound fame and success, right? So when I start acting different to what people are used to, and also I've just come off a TV show, people just, he's changed. He forgot who he was, right? He's from Hull, born and bred, and he don't remember any of it now.
They think it's because of
I think it's because of, so that made it kind of extra difficult. And that kind of is why, especially at the start of this kind of transformative period of my life, I did regress and go back, and I'd go back to Hull on nights out just to prove to everyone that I'm still the same person. And I still go back now, but it's very different now. I'm very much the new version of me, which I love. But I remember that period of my life when I'd go back to Hull or go hang out with these people and just like have a night off and just be the old me and get pissed, or just like tell the same jokes, and just be the old me. And it didn't really leave me feeling very good, but it reminded them that I hadn't changed, and that was all I wanted for that period of time. And then that kind of built up almost like a mental residue in my brain that made me feel shit. And I much preferred being the new me that people maybe thought was changed. And I'm at a period now which is so beautiful because I've got like 2 or 3 of the original friends that are even closer to me now because they've been on a very similar journey. And then all the other ones that I was friends with back then probably don't like me anymore, and that's cool because we're not on the same path, we're not compatible anymore. And now like I'm closer than ever with like the friends that I had since day one, like 2 or 3 of them that are still hanging around and still think I'm cool.
When it comes to this list again, sorry to go back to the list, when it comes to this journey, it requires a lot of discipline. A lot of people would fall back into these bad habits. And I know you said it was kind of back and forward, but so much of that is subconscious behavior. 2 things. One, how did you identify if it was starting to slip? You said like you'd maybe last half a day. Was it because you were so aware of these behaviors and wanting to change that it clicked? Did you have any tells, anything that where you realized, right, oh shit, right, I need to make a conscious effort again? Was there anything like that? And what did you do to continue that discipline? Was it just this real desire of wanting to be a better person?
So it started off quite simple, and the first kind of few books that I read was a very like self-help related books, right? And it was about discipline and habit keeping and that kind of stuff. And I recognized quite early on that if I put too much pressure on myself or made the change too big, I would fail miserably. Yeah. So when I started, when I wrote this list out, I didn't try to do like 10 out of 10 on the list every day. Like I would start by just doing 1 or 2 of those things. And then the next day I maybe did 1, next day I might have done 3 and like that. That times like 6 months, I got nowhere near the full list for the first good 6 months, right? And I think that played a big part in, and again, that's why I feel so grateful for that kind of, the pandemic happened. I had so much time to get it right. Fair play to people who've managed to do what I've done without a pandemic, and they're working 9 till 5 and they've got kids and it's a stressful environment. Like that must be so hard. Yeah. Like I just had myself and my thoughts day in, day out, me and my dad just chilling, chatting, talking about life. So in that respect, I got it so easy. But in terms of kind of tells and how I kind of identified if I'd had a bad day or whatever, it was, I would normally be able to tell by kind of 4 or 5 p.m. because I'd start giving into those old triggers and those old things. I'd maybe go on WhatsApp and text that old friend, or it was lockdown, so I'd have a beer at like 3 p.m. And I'm like, why am I having a beer at 3 p.m.? Just because everyone else is, or because it's allowed, or because I've got no work tomorrow. Doesn't mean it's the right thing. It doesn't mean it's aligned with what my purpose is or aligned with who I want to be as a person. And in that sense, I guess it does take discipline, but also like I'd got to a point where I was so not fed up of myself, but fed up of like kidding myself and then letting myself off the hook, basically. I was kidding myself, being like, yeah, but on the exterior, I've got Instagram, loads of followers, and I'm a fitness person. I'll have a beer. It's only 1 beer. But the reality of it was I was kidding myself for a bit. and letting myself off the hook. And then there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I think I started to feel...
Pronounce the author for a tenner.
No. No, I'm not going to try. You can look in the description or whatever for the book.
Look in the description, try pronounce it.
And I read it recently, but a part of what the book says makes sense to me because of what I went through back then. It's that like no matter what the kind of the things you go through in life, your body has and your brain has a really clever and acute way of keeping track of what happens to you. And I think I experienced that because I would go through like, and at the time I couldn't identify why, but I was going through like periods of like anxiety and periods of like feeling really unfulfilled and feeling like even so deep as like, oh, my family don't love me and stuff like that. Just really weird thoughts. And I genuinely believe, and I still do believe, it was because I wasn't sure of who I was as a person. And it's so much harder to navigate life and have a true understanding of what's going on around you if you don't even know who you are first, if you're not centered. So I think a huge part of that kind of journey for me was, first and foremost, figuring out who I was.
Tell us about some of the things you chatted with your dad about, because this moment seemed to have brought you two close together, and within that sort of that nurture seemed to be the catalyst for you to really start to find out more about yourself, along with the education and the learning and the self-analysis and that type of stuff. Yeah,
so my dad, like most kids, their dad's their role model, right? And I didn't see my dad so much growing up, so I kind of had two. I had my dad and then I had my stepdad, and they're like probably like Wayne Rooney or something. And I always knew of my dad's like core values. I always knew he was a nice, gentle man. I always knew he was friendly. I always knew he was polite, good manners, that kind of stuff. But I didn't know too much about what lied within and his deeper kind of, I don't know, his deeper, how his brain worked and that kind of stuff. Like I was a kid as well, so why would I know? And when I got close to my dad and had a good relationship with him, I was already like a young adult myself, and we would have conversations about things like government and politics and conspiracy theories and stuff that like, I probably wouldn't talk to anyone about at that period of my life. And I realized that like 16, 17, that my dad is like so intelligent. Like he's just like he has such profound thoughts. And I didn't know this about him until I was like 16, right? So I was like, oh my God, like I always knew my dad, but I didn't know him that well. And like, let's talk, and turns out like some of the things he would think about life, the deeper things, that kind of stuff, we would sit and talk for hours about. And I was like, I wouldn't even talk, like my best friend, I love him to bits, but like I wouldn't sit and talk to him for hours, like unless we was both drinking, like to just sit and chat for hours and hours and hours, like this is mad. And I would, things me and dad would talk about, just, something might pop up on the news and we'd talk about whether it was like, what do you think something else is going on there? Is there a false agenda? Like he would talk about his upbringing in Guyana, the country that he's from, and I would learn so much more about, and again, this is part of learning who I am as a person. Like I didn't know anything about my dad's childhood, anything about what he went through as a kid, moving to the UK at 16, going to uni in the UK as a foreign student, and all this kind of stuff. Like I was learning who I was vicariously through those conversations.
How important is it for us to have those moments of deeper connection with our loved ones, or with parents in particular, do you think?
Oh, it's so important because it makes you feel like you belong. And I think humans innately need that feeling. If you don't have that feeling of belonging, I think it can be quite a self-destructive place to be in. And not that I was ever self-destructive or that I never thought I belonged, but I definitely didn't feel like until that point, like I got a truer sense of what it felt like to belong when I got really close to my dad, because we're so similar. And I was like, oh, I'm not fully on my own, not just like this weird, like 48-year-old, 10-year-old. Like, I was, oh my God, like me and my dad are similar. There's someone else out there like me and thinks similar to me. Like, oh God, like, and then it does give you confidence, gives you, sense of belief and purpose and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it would have been nice to have that from day one, but like, I've got it now and that's great.
Yeah. And how much of that has been a factor, I guess, in where you're at just now? You've recently moved back to Leeds, which I think is quite poetic in a way that you grew up wanting to go out and see more of the world, and there's something quite nice about the fact that you've came full circle and you've moved back towards your roots. So, and we've obviously met Mac before. He's a great mate of yours. You've lived with your best mates for quite a while. How much has that connectedness to the ones that you love now kind of influenced that decision to move you back to Leeds? Is that one of the main factors?
Yeah, so being close to family was one of the, if not the biggest factor in me moving back home. I, like everyone, has had a difficult last 2 years not being close to family. I was very lucky that I lived with my best friends during the pandemic. Some people lived on their own. Some people like must have been way more difficult than how I had it. But the pandemic came just at a point when I started to wonder whether I wanted to be in London anymore. So I was starting to question whether I wanted to be in London. I was missing my family a lot. It was getting more and more like unnecessary for me to be there. So when I first moved there, I had to be there for work, right? I've been scouted by a London agency. All the jobs I was doing was in London. So I had to be there. It was a non-negotiable. And then fast forward to like just before the pandemic, and I was fully self-employed. Like I could work from anywhere. My job took me all around the country or even the world sometimes. And where I was based wasn't as important as it used to be. So I allowed myself to start thinking, oh, maybe I can move back up north one day, like back to where I'm from, be close to my loved ones. It's not a non-negotiable anymore. And then boom, we had a pandemic, and all those thoughts kind of frozen. And like I said, I'm so grateful I lived with my best friends for that period of time. And it wasn't ever like difficult. But I had those thoughts bubbling in my head the whole time, and you know the restrictions kept getting pushed back, and you're thinking, oh, 1 more month we'll be out of this, and I can resume these thoughts, right? And I kept delaying it. And we finally arrived at this position where like you can have a bit more freedom, and I knew, possibly because I had so much free time to think about it, I knew in my heart like the next step was to move back close to my family. It was where I feel more grounded, more rooted, and I also feel like there was a lot of unfinished business, right? So when I got scouted as a model, I wasn't like ready to move at that point. It just happened and I just took my chance. But not ideally, but like, you know, I wasn't longing out the window for a move to London. I just wasn't. I was very happy, and I was still in this journey of getting to know myself, know my dad more. So there's definitely an element of like, right, let's kind of finish let's carry on from where we left off kind of thing, and carry on this journey of self-discovery and knowing more about who I am and my family and that kind of stuff. And it's much easier when you're within an hour of everybody. Whereas before I was like 4 hours away and I had to pre-plan stuff. People had to book stuff off work and if I was going to come up and that kind of thing. And it was always so difficult. Whereas now it's like, oh, Dad, time do you finish work? 5. Oh, do you want to come around for a coffee? And it's like, it's that simple, which sounds very simple, but like I missed that for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a huge factor.
Yeah. Tell us how Mac, Chris, Jordan handled it when you said you're going to move. Because I think a lot of people would be scared to make that decision because obviously that's the friendships, but you had so much going on as well. You know, had the show on MTV. There was lots of really exciting things, and you know, you've stayed so true to yourself, and it's like you're on this mission now, and you're determined to continue it. A lot of people would be scared to take that leap, but it wasn't anything that was taken lightly, of course, but the boys took it really well.
Oh, the boys took it well, and the thing is, first and foremost, these are some of my best friends. So no matter what decision I make, I think they would respect it. Even if they didn't agree with it. Turns out they did agree with it, and they wish me good luck and whatever. But first and foremost, they're my friends, and they care about me, and they're good people. So no matter what I say, no matter what the reason is, they would respect it. And I knew that going into it, so I was never so scared. It was more the case of like ending the foursome that we have. Like we've created almost a brand. Like we're like brothers, right? Have the show on MTV. It's called Living the Dream, right? So
a brand of brothers.
What exactly?
Well done. Well done. We'll put that in the promo trailer.
Episode title. So why would I move out? Why would I leave that? Right? It seems to be all kind of fairy tale, and you live with your best friends, and you all work and that kind of stuff. It was all great, but I was at this point 18 months prior where I was thinking about moving back home. And I think you say it must be scary, but what scared me so much more was extending the lease, staying with them for longer. And then knowing in my heart that I didn't really want to be there and having to fulfill a contract or fulfill that tenancy. Living there, like just spending all my time going up north and seeing my family, and then they might think, oh, Danny doesn't even like us anymore. Like he's never here anymore or whatever. And it was never like that. And, you know, for me, it was like I'd arrived at this point mentally where I knew I wanted to be close to family. And besides the 3 lads I lived with, London didn't have anything really for me. Everything else in terms of how I prioritize things in my life, everything else was up north. And when I explained it to the lads, they took it fine. They took it really well. They was like, look, it's good to see you go, first and foremost. Like, we've had some great memories, but like, we understand your decision. Like, no one was like, oh, it's wrong. How can you move out? Like, what? Like, it was just one of them. And no matter what, let's say hypothetically I stayed with them, right? And we might have got another series of MTV and things might look so great on the exterior. But the key is I wasn't feeling fully fulfilled the last 18 months interior, like on the inside. Even I remember days of filming the show and being just so distracted by like my mum might have been in hospital, or like my sister being not too well, or like brother going through stress at school, or like stepdad changing careers, and like I'd be on a filming day with MTV living the dream, and like my head's not even there. And it would get to a point when I was starting to think like, if I stay here and we get more series, at some point I'm going to jeopardize my friends' careers, because I'm going to make life hard for them. Like it might reflect on them if I'm just not even with it. If I turn up to a shoot in a mood, or I'm not quite with it because I miss my family, that's going to at some point bounce back and hit them where it hurts. So as much as it's like a decision for myself, also it was what's best for all four of us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Let's talk about some of the things that do make you fulfilled now. So I've got a handful. I've got a handful that I want to go through. Let's tackle them one at a time. I'll prepare you for what they are first.
Yeah.
I want you to tell everyone about this amazing trip that you just took to Houston and the opportunities that arose there.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'd love to cover mental health and exercise. I'd love to cover Amplify. But most importantly, out of all of that, I'd love to cover potentially some of the ideas that you have with regards to either campaigning or movements or doing things based on your mum and fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
'Cause I think some of that stuff's incredible as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, the trip to Houston. Wow. So a bit of context. I've always been into fitness and health, like I've described. And one of the people that I first ever followed on any social media platform was a guy called Christian Guzman. And it was on YouTube before Instagram, before Facebook, Twitter. I was just like a 16-year-old on my mum's computer. And I'd go on YouTube and watch Christian Guzman's YouTube videos. He was like a fitness influencer. And he was one of these shredded physiques, going to the gym, posing in the gym. And he just watched, like these little compilation videos where he's posing. It just looks great. And I'd follow him purely for that, bit of inspiration, bit of motivation. And then quickly enough, his content decided to evolve into more like vlog style content. He'd taken you along with his days, with his journey. And he went on to start a clothing brand called Alphalete, which is a sportswear brand, and then opened a gym called the Alphalete Gym. And he's also like an online coach at the time as well, doing all the kinds of things that one day I'd love to do. And I just find him so aspirational at this point. I'm this impressionable teenager. I think he's absolutely amazing. And as I started to mature and grow up, like some people, they kind of go through that period, and like the people they used to adore, they kind of drift away. It's like, oh, I used to think that was cool. With me and Christian Guzman and a few other people, it just got stronger. As I got older and started to appreciate how hard life was, and owning businesses and juggling staff and that kind of stuff, I found him more cool, like more respectable. This guy never sleeps. He's always working. He's got great values. He has a great company. People love working for him. And I found him to be a really, really great role model. And even times when I found myself cutting corners or being a bit lazy, I'd watch a video of his and be inspired and then go do the thing that I know I needed to do.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I've always found him so inspirational, so motivational. And fast forward to like today, I've never stopped watching his YouTube videos, but kind of fast forward to today, and I'm in the position that I'm in now, where I work with some amazing brands. And, you know, I'm in a position where I get to work with a lot of brands, but I choose not to. I choose to work with very few brands, just the ones that I love a lot. So it means I probably miss out on quite a bit, but I'd rather do that than work with brands I don't truly believe in. And it's been a long journey, but I got to a point where like I'm very happy with the brands that I work with, although they're quite a selective group. And it got to about maybe 6 months, maybe about 8 months ago now. And I'll never forget it. I get a DM of Christian Guzman himself. He DMs me on Instagram.
Look at his face. I wish the camera could pick that up.
We saw his face last night when he got a text as well.
And this is about 8 months ago, and he just wanted to send me some clothes for me to try on. So bear in mind, I'm already in this position where like I do brand work, and I fortunate to get paid to work with brands and that kind of stuff. And he just wanted to send me some stuff, like not to pay me, nothing. He just wanted to send me some stuff out, and if I liked it, great. Just wanted some feedback.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my, I'd be privileged, I'd be honored. Like, and I remember it coming through, and it was like, you know, it said from Alphalete, you know, Texas, and I was at the parcel open up, like, and yeah, and from there, the direct message conversation kind of stayed open. And you know, every time a new drop came out, he would send me some stuff, and I was like, this is, oh my God, like, what the hell? He knows who I am. Like, and I'm more and more engrossed in the brand now, and I'm more following their journey than ever before. And obviously I told Jake about it, my manager, And obviously my manager being a manager and thinks commercially and that kind of sense is his job, he kind of thought, well, if he's sending you stuff and you're loving it, like, let's try and work with them kind of thing. And, you know, it kind of snowballed. And then we got to a point where I'm on like a retainer with them. So they send me the stuff and I shoot content for them. And it's like a content creation kind of deal that we have. So I'm already like living the dream. I'm like, oh my God, I'm creating content for a brand that I've loved for the best part of 10 years.
Wow.
The best part of 10 years, I've followed this brand and the owner. And now I'm at a point now where this brand is like global and they, for one, know who I am. And for two, they pay me to like wear their stuff. What the fuck? like forget these teeth whitening deals and whatever else you're going to offer me. Forget all like, no, I'm happy with this one deal. So yeah, and then that deal lasted about 4 or 5 months, and that takes us back up to like last month. And the company Alpha Elite and Christian, they're growing at a rapid scale, and they decide to open a new headquarters in Houston, Texas. And it opened on New Year's Day this year, so like a couple weeks ago. And for the opening, they invited me out to Houston to go and be part of the opening and be part of the team and be part of all the content creation that goes around the opening and be an athlete. They call them athletes, right? The sponsored athletes. And yeah, they invited me out. I flew out. I go there for like 4 or 5 days, and I was part of the team. I was part of the family, part of the part of the team, yeah. And by the way, when I say headquarters, I'm really underplaying it. It's like it's the head office for the whole company. So imagine a big corporate building. Then they built 3, not 1, not 2, they built 3 gyms side by side, which even just one of them gyms would be the best gym in the UK. Like, but they built 3 side by side, 2 basketball courts, a restaurant, football pitches. It's just a whole, like, it's like a university campus stroke complex.
That is just incredible.
Incredible, yeah.
And I wish I could just kind of take a bottle of the emotion that I felt and just sip it every day, because it's like that level of inspiration and motivation, and you're walking around people, you're meeting people, and it's almost like it just drives, it attracts a certain type of person who I kept meeting minute after minute, and I was inspired by him. And then a content creator would come to me and like, I love him, he's so inspiring. And then someone would meet me so friendly, can I still using that way? Oh no, go for it. And I'd be like, oh thanks, have a good workout. And like just little things like that. And I was like, wow, what Christian's created here is something really out of the ordinary and really incredible. And yeah, the fact that I'm even a little part of that, I feel so lucky. That is mad.
It's class, man. We can obviously both see how much it means to you, and we've spoken about it the last couple of days we've been together. So yeah, what was it like actually arriving there, knowing that you were going to go and then meet Christian, one of your heroes? You know, the saying is always never meet your heroes, but that, like, what that doesn't ring true for then what happened for you when you actually got to meet him.
I had that in my head when I was going to meet him. So I first and foremost, I missed my flight, right? So I got my flight to Miami, had to change in Miami and get a flight from Miami to Houston. And my first flight got delayed, which meant my connecting flight I missed. So I get to Houston the next morning, and because of the change of plans, now Christian himself had to pick me up from my hotel on the way to the shoot on the first day, which wasn't the original plan, but because I turned up so late, he had to then pick me up himself. And I was so nervous. I was so anxious. I was like, never meet your heroes. This might not, you know, I've glamorized this guy for 10 years, right? What if he's not as good as he is in real life? What if he's not Spider-Man? Like, what if he's not the real thing? And you know, this big truck, but I'm in the lobby waiting, like nervous, the palms sweating. I'm texting Jack, he's 1 minute away. Like. And he pulls up in this big truck, a couple of staff in the back, like, you know, employees, like, you know, the stylists and that kind of stuff. A couple of models on the shoot too. Pulls up, opens the boot, opens the side door. I hop in. He's like, yo, Danny, like, good to meet you, bro. And like, I'm like nearly tearing up. Like, oh my God. I shook his hand. I remember you went to spud me, and I went, I'm gonna shake your hand, man. I shook his hand, and instantly the nerves, everyone just settled right down. And I was like, wow, like, he's just like a normal guy. Obviously, he's achieved so much, but then it's like also he's such a relatable, accessible character. And it was like an hour from the hotel to the shoot. And in that hour, it never went silent for more than like 5 seconds before like someone else chipped in and started talking again. And Christian was so involved in the conversation. Bear in mind, he's the owner of this giant company, right? And he's talking to me, then he's talking to like a stylist, he's talking, and just about general chit chat, not even about work really, it's just chit chat, conversational stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, like I don't know many owners of big companies that would be like that. But quite often owners, and I understand why, but they take themselves a bit further away. They're less involved. Yeah. But Christian is so involved in the process of the Alpha Elite, and he'll go from 1 minute being a photographer in the studio shooting pictures of the models to then like he's uploading products to the website. To then he's behind the counter in the kitchen asking about the menu and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, this guy, like, you see people who like love their business and their business is their baby. Like that is him.
That's unheard of for someone of his level.
Yeah, for someone who's built something of that stature and that size, you'd have thought surely you've got to take a back seat at some point. And he's so and not even in a negative sense where like he's going to burn himself out or like he does too much or he don't trust his own staff. It's actually very admirable how hands-on he is and how much like he's so involved in the process and how much he cares.
Yeah, it's amazing. Tell us a little bit about some of the other exciting stuff. So tell people a little bit about mental health and exercise coaching. So that's obviously how we all became acquainted a while back now, which is absolutely incredible. And when we first met you, it was like a no-brainer. We were like, right, we have to get involved with Danny. So we went and spoke to Jake, and we went and spoke to Jake first because we were meeting you and Mark, and we thought that we'll be respectful
because we're these hot shots, right?
Yeah, they were just like
our agents first.
Yeah. Even though you were in the next room,
speak to my team.
And we've been with you all day. And I just said to Ben, I was like, no, you know what? I don't want to put them on the spot or anything like that. So I went through and spoke to Jake, and I was like, look, we know these guys are so aligned with everything that we're doing. Danny's, he's going to be launching as a PT on this brand new app, and we'd love to work together. And Jake was like, yeah, I know. And we're like, what? He was like, yeah, they've already spoken about it. And me and Ben were like, shit, we're like, this is great. And I think it just shows how much from day one our values were aligned.
Yeah, 100%. I'll kind of answer the Amplify thing as well with this. So again, bit of context. So I was already speaking with Matt Morton, who is helping me with Amplify. And for those of you who don't know, Amplify is going to be a new social media platform essentially for health and wellness and creators. And I'm going to be lucky enough to be one of the first creators on this platform where I'm going to be able to run an online coaching service that's going to be a 360 holistic view of your health and fitness and well-being, which is going to be so amazing. And it's been in the pipeline for the best part of a year now. And I met Dan and Ben, you guys, through Amplify, essentially, through Matt. Yeah. So the first I heard from you guys was when I had a conversation with Matt, and he said to me, look, I've got two lads who have brought an award out, which is right up your street. At this point, Matt knows how much I care about mental health and how much I want to incorporate mental well-being into my online coaching platform. I don't want it to just be like a get shredded in 6 minutes. Like I want it to be like become a better person, get fit as a byproduct. Like that's kind of the look I'm going for. So when Matt said, I've got a couple of guys there that, I think they've got an award that you'd be interested in. He explained the award to me, mental health and exercise coaching, and I was like, yeah. Like if I was to create an award, it would be this. Like it's me in an award.
Well, you were too late, right?
Yeah. Why didn't I think of this? Fucking fuck Dan and Ben. No. So obviously, me and you, we met those guys, and we did the 2-day course in London, and I loved every second of it. But I've done qualifications before. Never have I ever felt like there was, once the course was done, that I wasn't finished, and there was more to not to the job, but just like to the mission. If anything, it felt like just like created more of a hunger and a desire to get more involved in the mental health space and creating actual change in the industry. I thought I was going to do this course to equip me to be a better coach. That was my intention going into it. Now I realize the mission's so much bigger than that. Like we can help other coaches, who can help other clients, who can help their family members, who can help their family members and change society. That was never my mission. It's kind of your mission. Yeah. But now I realize that's the only mission. Forget me and being a good coach. Like that's going to come. Like there's a bigger mission going on here. And very quickly I kind of realized that. And, I remember like it was yesterday when I was speaking to Jake about it. And I was like, look, I know I've done the course now, and we did a couple of dates together where I came to the events. But I felt like there's more to this. Like we need to work more with Dan and Ben on this project because it's massive and it's so aligned with who I am and where I'm going that it would be silly not to collaborate on this. And Jake was like, yeah, of course, this is a no-brainer. Like, of course. I don't know how to propose it or what you're even asking of me. And I was like, yeah, I don't either. But let's talk to them. Let's just say like how much we love them and how much we want to like, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And I remember we had a Zoom and I kind of just said everything I just said basically. And you guys were like, yeah, like what does this mean? And we didn't even really know at the time what it meant, did we?
You know this. I don't know if you know this yet. But in our office, we've got multiple desks. We've got the mobile moving desks. My one I've never sat at once.
Gathering dust.
We've been in there since September. We've been there for over 6 months. I've not sat on that chair once because I just stand. So I just stand and present and talk. And we were standing next to each other, and we knew somehow there was going to be some sort of future work. And because we were so bought into you, and we loved you, we were like, but we didn't have an idea about what we could really do together as well. And anyway, so I've got my notepad there, which is still sitting there. And I remember we were sitting chatting, and and you were chatting about it, and Ben just wrote yes with an exclamation mark, and then I just wrote next to it, fucking yes.
Oh wow. Yeah. Wow.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, it's in
whilst we was on Zoom?
Yeah, we were on Zoom. He wrote yes, and I was just like looked at each other, nodded, and I was like, fucking yes.
Wow, that's incredible.
It was conversations that we'd had as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing point as well, because we've met and we're just so aligned. And it's like when we were out for dinner last night, those are the conversations me and Ben have, and then it's just like the exact same. Like it is like we've known each other for so long, so our values are so aligned. And even when we sit and host these podcasts, this is us just having a conversation like we would be normally anyway. So so it was stuff that we'd sat and discussed as well. So it was absolutely incredible. So anyway, so back to that. So that's something that you're taking a lot more seriously now, and that's going to be a really nice way to implement into your coaching service, which you're launching pretty much any day now.
In the next month. In the next month, hopefully. So like I said, a year in the making, and we talked earlier about kind of remembering who I am and pursuing a life that I want to lead rather than the default version. And becoming a coach and helping people with their health and fitness goals was one of the very first things that I realized about what I wanted from life. And I did my PT qualifications like 2.5 years ago, did a nutrition one about 6 months later, did my MHEC qual, and I've just signed on to do 3 more quals with Matt, actually. But yeah, I've always known it had to be about providing value. I've always known it had to be about giving value in some kind of way. It's reciprocal, right? You're not born to then just take, and then you die. You're born, you take, and then you give, and then you take, and then you give a bit more. And that's kind of how I've always seen it. And with health and fitness and coaching, I was like, well, it's a match made in heaven. I know I've got to give, and I love fitness, so I'll just give fitness. And it was like, it was just a no-brainer. And I knew that a long time ago. So to finally be at this point where I'm on the cusp of about to launch it, like I can't express how excited I am for it. And like I say, mental health and mindset and well-being and also kind of overthrowing some of the existing values in the industry and almost tackling them head on. I'm kind of looking forward to that. I'm sure I'm going to get DMs off current coaches like, what you're on about nonsense, shut up. Like I'm looking forward to that because we need to change the narrative, in my opinion, and in your guys' opinion too, luckily. And I couldn't be more excited to be on the cusp of that.
It's amazing, isn't it? And potentially when this is out, you may be doing this now. You may be doing this. So if anyone's listening to this and they're like, right, I love this. I love what this is all about. I would love to be coached by Danny. Obviously things aren't totally set up now, but what can they do? Can they message you? What if someone's interested in working with you?
So the best place to contact me as of right now is my Instagram, which is at It's Danny Williams, so ITS Danny Williams. Danny Williams was just taken, so I said It's Danny Williams. I didn't think of underscores or numbers. It's Danny Williams.
Danny Williams.
Yeah, at least it's not the Danny Williams.
It's funny, people will see me and go, "Oh my god, it's Danny Williams." I'm like, "Yeah, you remembered."
That's what you should do for yours then. It's Ben Lewis.
And it's Dan Hancock. No, we won't.
So that'd be the best place to find me. Although I hope that when this podcast is heard by people, I will have a full platform to access. But yeah, best place to access me right now would be It's Danny Williams on Instagram. I will reply to your DM if it's anything to do with wanting to be coached, and I will have you on a waiting list. So when the project is released and out there, you'll be the first to access it.
What sort of things can people expect? I know it's for us now sitting here.
Question.
It's quite self-explanatory for us because I know what you can do and I know what you're passionate about. For anyone listening, what can they expect from this? What can they get that's different from the norm?
Okay, so I'll answer that second bit first, because if I say what can they expect, I'll be talking for another 3 hours. What they're going to get that's different is a 360 holistic approach to your health.
Love it.
And working out is only one pillar of your health. Working out and exercise is one pillar of your health. It's a 360 holistic approach, and it's a personal approach from myself personally. It's been a year in the making, this, and it's not just been like a week here and a week there. It's been a year every single week up until this point, and a lot of time and effort and energy has been put into this project. And it's very much my project with the help of a team. It's not the other way around, and not to slag people out there, but a lot of people, especially in my position with the platform, they have a team who do it all, and they're the face of the business, if that makes sense, and they get all the credit and they give the company some money for that. Whereas for me, it's very much my project with my values, the way I train, the way I eat, health advice, mindset, wellness coaching, that kind of stuff. It's all me, and it's all based off of my personal experience. And I'm just going to share that with people at a very affordable price, in my opinion. And I'm really excited to kind of disrupt what's going on right now, because a lot of people think the only way to get fit and healthy is by buying like a 6-week get shredded plan, which works for some people, but for a lot of people, that's going to get them. It might even get them shredded, but they don't even want to be shredded. A lot of people don't actually want what they're signing up for. A lot of people want to feel good in their own skin. They want to feel more confident. They want to have better relationships. They want to have better sleep. They want loads of other stuff. They want to be a better person in general. And I really, really think that what I'm about to offer people can help them achieve those true inner goals, rather than these surface goals that they think they have.
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing that go live. And let's also touch on another thing that's very close to your heart. You mentioned earlier on in the app that your mum has fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot of work in that space to campaign for fibromyalgia, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So there's a charity that I work with called FMA UK, and I've worked with them for my best part of two years. As soon as I got a platform, it was one of the first things I wanted to do was kind of help raise awareness first and foremost. The goal is to raise money, which goes towards funding, which goes towards research, goes towards treatments. But right now, the biggest thing I kind of have been doing is the raising of awareness of it. I talk about it a lot on my socials. I share a lot of content and that kind of stuff. But which sounds great. I'm not even bigging myself up. The point I'm trying to make is it's not enough, right? And what I've got planned and what the future looks like for raising awareness and creating change is actually really exciting. I'm going to do it in one medium through my Amplify profile. So as I kind of described what Amplify looks like to me and what I'm about to bring out, it looks like this. But I don't want it to look like this forever. It's going to grow arms and legs, and some of that is going to be to do with raising awareness and helping people directly who suffer from fibromyalgia on their journeys, because one thing is not enough people know about it, not enough people talk about it. Another huge thing is that people who suffer from it think they're unhelpable.
Yep.
They think they can't have help because of the condition that they've got, and it's so not true. And there's just no one out there who's offering the right help for the people that need it, unfortunately, and my mum it falls perfectly into that category of, oh, well, I'm never going to be in shape. That isn't for me because I've got fibro. And my mum thinks like that sometimes, or a lot of the time, and millions and millions and millions of people across the world think just like it, and it's just not the case. Yeah. So my longer vision and the bigger mission is to impact those people in the best way that I can. But as of right now, I need to get there. I need to get into the industry first, help people with my coaching platform first and foremost, and that's what the arms and legs looks like for me, and then hopefully that'll become my main focus one day.
Brilliant. And I think to wrap up and to finish off, it would be silly not to mention it. What's the goal for the podcast? Where would you, if we're sitting here, like, I don't know, a year down the line, 2, 3, what vision do you have for this? The
vision I've got for this, and it always comes back to value, right? It always comes back to how can I provide value, which sounds so like profound and so like, oh, it's so nice and whatever, but it does. And from a selfish
oh my God, it's Danny Williams.
It's Danny Williams.
But from a selfish perspective, being nice makes you feel good. First and foremost, when you're nice, you feel good about it. If you get a nice review on a podcast, or you share a recipe and someone makes it for the kids and the kids loved it, or if you do a workout, someone did the workout and then they feel great for that workout, you feel great yourself for doing it, right? And that's one side of this podcast. We're providing value, I hope, to people, and they might benefit from the podcast, right? what I would love for this project to end up looking like is it reaching thousands of, if not millions of pairs of ears, and thousands upon thousands of reviews where people have shown us that it's positively impacted them in any capacity. It could be as simple as like, oh, I normally hate my drive to work and now I love it because of the podcast. It could be as simple as like, oh, like I put the podcast on and I couldn't hear like my sister hoovering up and it does my head in normally, like, or it could be as big and as monumental as like, I put the podcast on and you really changed my outlook on how I see my situation. I can help myself. I thought I was all boxed in and now I've got a new lease of life. Or reviews like that could just, they're within our grasp, I think. And with this podcast, there's no limit to what we can go and achieve and how big it can possibly get and how many people we could possibly help. So the sky's a limit quite literally. And the more people we can reach, the better. Forget if it gets sponsored, forget if it can earn money. Like, I really don't care about that. I'm like, when we launch this, if we get like 100 followers and like people listen, like it just like, even if like my mum listens and likes it, like I'll be over the moon. Like, I genuinely believe we're having really important conversations and documenting them and then putting them out on the internet or into the universe for people to absorb and consume. And I just think they're really powerful conversations, not just from us three, but from really amazing guests as well. And I think sooner or later, people are going to see the value in that and it's going to help people.
Yeah. Amazing.
That was brilliant. I feel like we've had another guest on and you're obviously one of the hosts of the podcast. I feel like we should be getting the head-to-head challenge out right now.
Right, so we've got this challenge.
It's not fair because I know all the questions.
Yeah. I think
right, dogs, curry, America. Like.
Roy Keane.
I think, mate, honestly, on our end, we're incredibly proud of you. You've stayed true to yourself. You've been on this incredible journey. You, as we spoke with Jake and as you spoke today, you turn deals down if if they don't align to you. You're taking a step back from certain things and you're focusing on you. And so many people do not do that in that position. And to watch it unfold is absolutely incredible. And honestly, sitting with you last night, having dinner and stuff, you couldn't look happier. With like your phone flashing up, it's Christian. Can you come and do this? Like 2 days notice, and you're God, just like, yeah, it is. I think Ben will agree. It's to witness this journey firsthand. It's extremely powerful and empowering, and for us as well. And yeah, very proud, aren't we?
Definitely, that's really means a lot, and I can't express how much meeting you guys has kind of accelerated that process. It's like the stars are kind of aligning, and it's like you talk about putting stuff out in the universe and it comes back, it's reciprocated. I feel like I started to do that, and then lo and behold, I meet you two guys, and it's like, wow, you guys are so aligned with what I talk about, what I believe in, and I just feel like the future looks really exciting.
Yeah, it's just clicked perfectly for the three of us. I think on that note,
right, we're away to have a cry and a cuddle. So everyone, hope you enjoyed. Danny, honestly, mate, that was absolutely incredible. And guys, listen, I hope you enjoyed that too.
Do you know what's mad? Now you're about to wrap up and you sound all professional again. I forgot we was even filming a podcast. We just sat and chatted.
It is literally a normal conversation that we would have eating dinner or just sat after work.
But that's what I said. We need the crew to start filming us, following us about.
Yeah.
We recorded, or we didn't record. Sorry, we probably chatted what would have been the best podcast ever, sitting in a taxi for dinner last night.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, the Uber driver got his. He made his.
Oh, we didn't record it. Sell that.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Well done, guys. Good luck.
Cheers, lads.
Until next time. Wow, how good was that? That was, we really enjoyed recording that episode, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will probably have known Danny from his time on television, whether that be through Love Island or Living the Dream. And some people might have created their own misconceptions about Danny, so hopefully today's episode has put a lot of those misconceptions to bed, and for those that know him really well will see how well he's came across and shown how genuine and humble a guy he is. So until next time, remember, give us your support, leave a review, like, share, comment, subscribe. We are Happy to Health Podcast, and until next time, see you then.